Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4:30. Time to call this meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. I would entertain a motion at this time to approve the agenda.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
And I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. And I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Oh.
I'd like to have two items removed.
Well, then,
Consent number 13 and number 16.
number 13 and number 16. Do that.
So I move to approve this consent agenda with items 15 and 16 removed.
Do I have a second? Got a second? You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Customers to be heard to recognition. Bill? Anything?
Nope.
Anything good? No. Old business, then we'll move right to some fun. At this time, we'll entertain any old business. I think for our guests, we're going to move the water tower conversation up to this earlier point of the agenda. Any other old business before we talk about water tower? Old business? I asked him ahead of time. He said no. He said no. All right, well, with that, Sue, may we impose on you to join us? Keep that little guy. We have a visitor today. Busy. There we go.
I have on the stand microphone.
On your agendas, this is item number 17. When we go to item 17 in the homework, you'll find the background and recommendations from the staff and so forth. So, Bill, do we need to start off with anything?
I don't know if we need a whole lot from me. We've been talking about the artwork that's going to be on the Woodlawn Water Tower. The Woodlawn Water Tower is scheduled to be repainted, and the marginal cost for painting something on the tower is best done when you're doing the project. So that is scheduled for this summer. And our staff, and I know Mark and Chris, have been working on with Sue Leggett to do a water tower art rendition on that water tower. Chris has been involved with the Arts Commission, and Cheryl as well. So, I mean, with that, I think I'll let Sue kind of give the overview, and then we've got some recommendations, and actually we have two options, and we can talk about those. The MPS does have $20,000 in our budget for this project. Option 2 is a $26,000 option, of which the city is offering to pay for half of the difference in that additional $6,000. So I'm sure we can talk about that, and then we can talk about the different designs. And with that, that's probably more than what I needed to say, because Sue can kind of give an update as well. So,
Okay.
Sue Leggett, project facilitator for the Woodlawn Water Tower. As Bill mentioned, the MPS had previously approved $20,000 for this project. When we were creating the design, and the 26K design that you have before you is what the design committee came up with, and it was altered based on the feedback we received the last time it was presented to this group as well as other groups. It was a little bit of a chicken and egg situation where we didn't know what a $20,000 design necessarily looked like, so we came up with what the group's sort of ideal design was, submitted it to the contractors, and found out it was a little over $26,000. At that time, the conversation started with the city manager and a few others about coming up with a way to make up that difference. But I wanted to make sure that we had a design that was prepared for the existing budget. So we went back to the community feedback we received. The predominant or the main comment we got back was regarding nature and recreation. So if you look at the 20K design, that's where the primary focus has been. Inside the circle is mostly nature, and then between the circles is nature and recreation. We got it to 20,000 because the stencils between the circles are identical and the circles themselves are identical. So because it's a repeat of a pattern, that brings the cost down. Both designs I think are fantastic. Both designs are appropriate for what we heard from the community. And stylistically, they're very similar. I think the design committee did a really nice job.
Thank you. Chris or Cheryl, you've been involved in this. You care to lead us off in discussion?
Well, I guess I would like to applaud the work of the committee because, and the artists, because they really responded well to the task at hand, and I think the artists were great to work with. They had ideas and they took constructive feedback and they incorporated things where they could. And I think both designs are fantastic. So.
Good. Cheryl?
Well, I agree with what Chris just said. You know, I think the big question for tonight is whether or not the enhanced design, which really pulled out details that was very important to the community members that sat on the council, is worth that extra change. Mm-hmm. And it's my understanding that the city has met and they have already agreed to pay half of the $6,000 overage, which would leave us looking at $3,018 to be specific. So I guess I do like both designs. I think both are great. I think, you know, if money wasn't an issue, I would certainly be looking at the second option number 2. Just because it pulls out a lot of elements that are a focus of what happens downtown Moorhead. But again, option 1 is great too. I like the circle, I like the way Moorhead is represented, I like the colors, I like the wraparound design and the like. So I guess I would just open it up to the other committee members as to whether or not how strongly they feel about the extra $3,000.
Mm-hmm. Well, John or Ralph, jump in at any point. If you have ideas, concerns, questions.
I'm not worried about the money. I just want to make sure it looks nice. From a personal perspective, I like cleaner looks. I think the second one is, for me personally, has too much stuff in it. But I also understand how important it is to make sure that the neighborhood gets some of its things back. And I think that is accomplished in the second one. Frankly, we did the same thing after World War II, where we listened very closely to the neighbors. So I'm really not worried about the money. I'm always worried about the money piece, but in this case, it's going to be up there for 20 years. You know, $3,000 is not going to be something that I'll take difference to. But again, personally, first one is a little bit cleaner, but that's just me.
I think just to respond to that, and I mean, Sue, maybe you can chime in as well, but I understand, you know, there is a part of me that sees a lot going on, but it's going to be on a very broad canvas, very big. You know, the water tower is large, it'll be on a white background, and therefore each of these elements should be spread out a little bit more to some degree. They'll be bigger.
It's hard to say the difference between seeing it flat and seeing it not only circular, but on a globe, so it's warped and circular.
Mm-hmm.
What effect that'll have on the silhouettes, it's really hard to say.
John?
I'd just like a little more discussion as far as my recollection of the discussions of the budget and the comments by some of the people who represent the city, that if there is an overage, that the city would cover those increases. increases or above the budget items. I was told by Steve, I was told I mentioned that in one of our first meeting, and also Chris had said that as well, as my recollection, that if it was appropriate, the city would cover that. That's my recollection. Now it's coming back as far as a split of the cost, so I guess where did that change occur, why did it occur?
My understanding is that he always had agreed that we would split half of the overage. I don't know where that
I just,
change and the difference
from
is.
comments from Steve and comments from Chris, was my recollection that there was a, so I guess that was just a board clarification question. And I guess I'd go back with Ralph as far as with the number of items on there, and I know it was talked about as far as, can you tell that the bridges, and it just seems to me that the first design is a little bit cleaner, and I guess that would be my initial thoughts.
Okay. I've got a couple of points. Probably the first one, Heidi, in talking about, there's been an ongoing conversation over the last 2 or 3 weeks about what we can spend our taxpayers and our ratepayers' money on. And some of that goes into the question of advertising, and some of it goes into scholarships and sponsorships and so forth. Was there any conversation among the council about that extra 6,000 in whether that's fallen into this category classification of promotion that according to Attorney Shockley, we can't do? I'm throwing a stick in the works here a little bit, and I apologize for that, but it has become kind of an ongoing conversation across several activities that we traditionally have been involved with, and we've got some difficult conversation to have about some of these things. But does that apply to this? Was it a part of your conversation at City Council?
No, it did come up as a part of our,
Okay.
as a concern. You know, we talked about it as marketing, we talked about it as advertising, we talked about it as, if that money is going to be spent on painting a tower, and to add an extra feature for a nominal amount of money,
Yeah.
that it didn't seem as though
Yeah.
it would be that.
I mean, communities do it all the time, and so it's not that big a deal, but suddenly we have this conversation that's going on, and they're bringing up a lot of points, whether it's the scholarships that we've been involved with, sponsorships for different events, so.
Let me ask a question. I must have missed a meeting. So
We haven't done that yet.
So we have Attorney Shockley telling us we can't do Ascot?
There is an opinion that has been expressed so far by Attorney Shockley to, I think, city managers. I think in response to questions from the city manager and maybe council, I don't know the background.
The council hasn't had a conversation, maybe particular council members.
Okay.
I haven't.
For your information, Chris, I was just bringing up some of the points that have been made about reusing taxpayer and ratepayer funds for things like advertising, scholarships, sponsorships, things like that. And the only reason I brought it up was because it seems like it's touching a lot of things that we're trying to do. One of the questions that was raised earlier was even the split of the additional 6,000 or so, and whether the additional 6,000 is falls into this category of promotional money or advertising or anything. But John also had a question about whether it was always the agreement to split that, and so you might be able to help us with that. But I only bring it up because like we're having this conversation about where we can spend our money. So if that's not an issue here, then I'll let it drop.
Well, I think I would like to understand a bit more where this is coming from. We have done this for 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know why City Attorney Shockley expressed an opinion now and suddenly it goes the other way. I mean, I would have liked to
Well, I'm being creative in applying it to the water
Yeah,
tower.
I understand,
he's
but-
made an opinion on the
Yeah.
water
I
tower.
understand, but
Yeah.
the issue came up as part of the water tower discussion, that apparently there's an opinion out there that we should not be engaging in marketing or whatever, whether it's a water tower or not. So that would be an interesting discussion to be had,
Yeah.
maybe in this group as well, when Attorney Shockey could show up here and maybe give us some basis for something.
Yeah, and this is, I'm sharing with you elements of conversation that I had with the city manager about some of these things, you know, and it isn't an agenda item necessarily, but it does kind of get into some of the things that we have traditionally done as a board, whether it's scholarshiping or whether it's sponsorships and so forth. Some of it might even be semantics, you know, or what it is that we apply our dollars very specifically to. If it's general advertising, you know, Moorhead Public Service has great rates, well, that might not be an appropriate message. Moorhead Public Service has great rates for your new company. You know, consider locating in Moorhead. That's development, and I think that's probably something that is warranted and even granted. But I brought it up here because, again, is this advertising? Is this art? Is it additional expense that ratepayers are paying for that maybe somebody's going to object to? So I like, you know, back to kind of I like the Moorhead and the circle, and I like the simpler look. I think it gets kind of crowded, and to spend an extra $6,000 for something that seems to be kind of crowded and so forth, seems like, well, then we're spending $6,000 that maybe the ratepayer, the taxpayer, wouldn't necessarily be excited about. Because it's additional money. It's an additional $6,000 for some elements that may or may not be really critical.
And those elements came about from discussion of a large group of people, as I indicated at earlier meetings, but there were key members from the actual neighborhood that felt that some of these elements were important to them, which is why you see so many in Ogden too.
In particular, the locomotive and the log cabin. And in probably the most important element was the log cabin in the more complex design.
That's right. The cabin was moved out of the neighborhood. That's right. It used to be there on the edge of what is sometimes a lake.
On the second option, you have some additional colors too. There, instead, like where you see the blue, like, that's the second, you have the additional
Oh, there's a
green,
green thing in there too.
and then extra wave of water down in the lower side. So,
Right. Well, we don't have a motion, and I'm sure that somebody wants to do something like that, to give us something to actually discuss and give us a need to. The chair would be open to proceeding with something.
Okay, I move to adopt option number 2 for the Woodlawn. Let's see if there's something more appropriate here. Move to approve option 2 for the final artwork for Woodlawn Water Tower.
I have a motion, is anyone willing to make a second?
I would be willing to make that second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Further discussion, now that we've kind of thrown out Robert's rules of procedure. Yes, sir.
So my question to you, to Chris and Cheryl, the cabin is important for the neighborhood, right?
It was very important to the neighborhood. And I think it's fairly clear to me, I mean, I was seeing both of these options for the first time tonight. I clearly understand where the opinions of the other members are coming from. But Chris and I sat through each of the meetings. We know what's important to that community. And I assure you, that's where my recommendation is coming from.
Was the participation particularly strong?
It was very strong.
Yeah.
It was very, it was really a great few meetings. People, I was really impressed to see different viewpoints being expressed and being respected, even when they weren't in agreement. And so there was a lot of back and forth on different elements and adding things and taking things away and moving things around and that kind of a thing to come up with what appeared to be the most eye-pleasing option, but still representative of these elements that were important to the local community, the neighborhood.
It was very collaborative.
Very, yes.
Just a thought, and this is just me. Is the locomotive really important in that? I think the locomotive is a little much in that centerpiece, but the cabin, the staff church and so forth.
To just possibly anticipate where you're going, these are the two options.
These are the two options.
Yeah, we don't have any more time to alter. And,
Okay.
so what we have is the options. Otherwise, the timeline would be affected, and I'm sure Chris wouldn't want to see that happen.
The local, to answer your question, yeah, that question did come up during the meeting, or the meetings, and it was important. And as far as placement goes, there was different discussion about where to place that exactly, and this appears to be the best option. There was some, I did see one representation of it off to the side, and at least at that point in time, it was very difficult to tell what it was. And so I think it might have been placed in the middle to kind of balance things out, and it is very clear as to what it is within that circle.
Any further discussion before I call for the vote? Okay. Well then, the motion is to go with option number 2 with the additional cost of $6,000 to $36 on top of the $20,000. Any further concern before we go for the vote about that, this school?
The cost is only $3,018 above and beyond.
Oh,
The city's-
for us, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're spending the city's money then with this, but you guys
We already
already,
approved it.
you already approved
Dave, just to clarify, the motion will read as it is shown in
As it
option
is
2 of the
26,
recommendation. Yeah,
26.
yeah, that's drafted just so that can be used as a motion.
Okay.
So that'll include that 50%.
it. Okay, all right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it.
Everybody remember?
Motion is passed. Yes, sir.
I certainly think it's appropriate that you follow through with what the neighborhoods would agree to, but I am disappointed with the process that we all knew the budget. We told them numerous times what the budget was, and you still came in over budget. And I don't feel comfortable with that process of even splitting with the city, that the direction all along, stay within budget, stay within budget. And I listened to the council meeting and how Sue got put in a position that we can spend more on this project, go back and get another drawing done, which I don't think was an appropriate position to put her in. So that would be my concern, that when there's a budget, we need to stay within budget and not change it along the process.
Just for the sake of discussion, with those comments in mind, John, then we have another water tower to do. What would we do different process-wise to manage? Because from the standpoint of visibility, not only to the community but to the world, it's right there on the interstate with a lot of traffic passing by and so forth. So if we we might be mindful and start thinking about how it is that we might alter our process so that next time it works.
I think the process that was used worked very well for both of the towers. It was just that it got changed along the way of what our budget was.
Yeah.
Without probably, I don't know how much impact or discussion Bill had involved in this, but I guess at this point, you could say that some of us only saw that this was changed in our minutes and our agenda item where our budget would be changed.
Yeah.
And I have a little bit of a issue with that,
Yeah.
or of how the process was used here for. So, okay.
Could I add something
Yep.
real quick based on that?
Can we get you closer to the
Sure.
microphone, sir?
Getting my steps in today.
Yeah.
Just to give a real quick recap on what myself and what the artists, we originally were contracted to take the Oakport Tower and modify it for the Woodlawn Tower based on community feedback. Just long story short, things happened along the way, and that responsibility was altered, which equaled considerably more hours for myself and for the artists. We're doing it because we believe in the project and we want to see Woodlawn have something great for their tower. But I do think it is part of the conversation that those artists, throw myself in there, but those artists in particular, if it is an option, be compensated appropriately because they created two completely new designs, and that's not what they were initially contracted to do.
And certainly appreciate the effort and the work that has been, that's not the point here, but the last time we had this water tower in Oakport, we had several comments about if it was appropriate to put art on the water tower and the concern about the expenditure. And we assured the users that we were staying within budget that would have been spent on the logo, which would be the same expenditure for the logo or the artwork. So it was a negative impact on us. And that was, again, the expressed concern with staying within budget because we didn't want to have any pushback like we did last time about spending dollars on artwork. And positive as it is, as we voted for this, so I guess started that the neighborhood chose this design. It's not a lot of dollars that we're spending here, and if it's in the best interest of the neighborhood, that's what we should do.
And I do think that the second design that is within budget is still appropriate, for Woodlawn and based on the community feedback that received in the online survey and with the open house. So it is, we've already voted and everything, so it's kind of a moot point, but it is still a lovely option.
Yes. Okay.
Sue, before you go away, what is what would you see to be the pool of inspiration to draw from for the tower that's out by the interstate? It's above a recycling plant and a soybean field. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering where we draw inspiration, and maybe the process needs to be altered a bit because, as I mentioned a little bit ago, that one is such a high traffic, high visibility facility, and I think it's lower. It's a different profile.
And it's lit.
And it's lit like crazy, so it's really visible.
Yeah, I think starting with Oakport, we could definitely consider Oakport sort of a neighborhood tower. It's rather secluded and you almost have to intentionally go there to see it. So it was a great test just to kind of figure out the process and then amping it up for Woodlawn, which is much more visible, but still neighborhood in how it's viewed and in its proximity.
Right.
The I-94 tower, I think, is definitely Moorhead tower. It's not, in my opinion, a neighborhood tower because it is so incredibly visible, and it's that, like we've been saying the whole time, it is that welcoming beacon, one of the first things you see that says Moorhead on it, aside from billboards. So I think that tower, if we choose to take this process and apply it to the I-94 tower, would, and I've been saying this for quite some time now, like that process should begin now. even though that tower's not being painted until, I believe, 2020. Because of its importance and because it does represent, I believe, the city as a whole. And with some of the ideas that I've heard from various people about how they would like to see not only just the way it's currently lit, but really amp it up.
Yep.
There's a lot of money in that, and there's a lot of time in that. And if that is something that we want to take seriously and make sure we do the best we can for that tower, it should really start now.
It seems that the Arts Commission and the EDA, for example, probably ought to be jointly involved in that one because of its importance to the image of the community that goes out and, way beyond the neighborhood. I look out at that tower from my neighborhood, it's there, it's visible, it's 3-4 blocks away, but it is lit like that, so it is really visible. But it's a bigger statement to a wider crowd, I think, so. Right.
Well, but now we need to talk budget too, right?
Well, then, yeah.
My assumption is that we'll have $20,000 for the administration, and then somebody needs to come up with a budget. But I'm hearing here right now, rightfully so, it doesn't sound to me like a $20,000 logo slapped on the water tower.
And it's larger, right?
It is. The Woodlawn Tower, I think, is 250,000 gallons. I-94 is 500. No, I'm sorry.
500 for Woodlawn, 750,000 for I-94.
Okay.
Potato, it's bigger.
And as you say, maybe, the lighting scheme, we might want to start thinking about how we light it.
Yeah, I know there was the idea brought up to have the color altering LEDs so that for events it could be, if Vikings go to Super Bowl, it can be purple and yellow or
So,
whatever.
purple.
But
I will be.
I will say that, because I did just some very, very minimal research, because that was brought up for the Woodlawn Tower, and there was no way it was going to be an option. So, and Travis might know more, but the cost of that type of lighting is significant.
We'll need to have a discussion about, start to get our handle on that this year for budgeting next year, because right now our CIP, it's just the recoding, that's all. So it'd be $20,000 or less is what's in there as of right
Well,
now.
I think it'd be a good idea to start to identify the appropriate partners, so that, we have all the right voices that are being heard on this one.
And I would, if I can say one last thing, the idea has come up to apply for a grant. I think given that we've already received a grant for the Oakport Tower, getting something regionally is arguably unlikely. Going to a national grant for painting a water tower is a pretty hard sell because it doesn't necessarily fall in that art category, and it doesn't, I don't know if there are grants for cities to do elaborate maintenance, if that can be termed. So if we do consider it a city tower, maybe there is, and I don't know what the legality of this is, but the idea of community buy-in or sponsorship from the citizens themselves, similar to what was done with the sidewalk poetry.
Now maybe Ravel will write a check.
I'll write a check, I won't get you.
Yeah, I didn't say how big it is. Yeah, no, I didn't. Okay, Ralph.
Well, my question, when are we building the south tower?
19.
19, so we
you'll
have a
actually,
discussion, we have to have a discussion on the south tower first.
right, yeah, well, they need to almost happen at the same time because we'll be applying for a dwarf grant application on April 17th. So we'll be talking about that in the next couple of weeks here. But design will be in the fall, so I would say we need to start that in April process, probably in July of this year. And, if there is a grant, we need to probably apply for it this fall to make funding for 20. But you're absolutely right, Southside is first, so we'd have to figure out that process. And that would presumably happen in the fall of this year. We'd actually start that process for Southside.
And that's a neighborhood that is still emerging, so it would be, again, kind of interesting to draw ideas. There's not a lot of identification. Okay, enough on that one, I suppose, but we'll get back to this topic eventually. Thank Thank you, Sue. Thank you
Sue.
for bringing the ball. Moving on to reports. City Council, let's start with you. We've already talked to you about that.
Talk me out.
Talked to you, okay. Public Service Commissioners, I know John has a topic. Anybody else? Anything to report? John, we'll go to you.
I'd like to discuss this location as far as how open it is to the public. Because our meetings are supposed to be open to the public, and I would think accessibility is important for that, that we should make it as easy to get to the meetings as possible. So, and again, I'm assuming it's anybody who can get into the building at this point can get here, but I know a couple other meetings when we talked about deliveries or people who were gonna be late couldn't get in because of the doors being locked. If we have the doors locked and we can't get the public in, then we don't have an open meeting. So I think we need to probably have some discussion or agenda item here to see if this is an appropriate place, and if we still feel it, how can we make sure that we have access available and good instructions, how to get here, and seating availability, all those kind of questions come into play for it. Because I do have a concern at this point that this is a pretty restrictive environment that people would not find it if they wanted. So just any other person, just thoughts or
Any other
comments?
thoughts? Bill and I had a brief conversation yesterday, that touched on access. My immediate, I didn't remember seeing an elevator, for example, so I was concerned that we didn't have real ADA access, to this space. But there's probably a checklist for us to actually have to consider to start to address, many of the points that John started to bring up. I know we got restrooms that are underway and things like that, but maybe we should talk about that checklist or items that create that access for the public, and how we further complete the room so that there is seating for people, and so that it would work. I personally like the space for these kinds of working meetings. Now this would generally be a meeting that we would have in the council chamber, because we've been wanting to do the strategic planning and that kind of more detailed work with our department groups here. But then, for example, with Sue and the water tower topic, it would have been more appropriate for us to be in the regular chambers. So, Heidi.
When you're creating your checklist, keep in mind bus stops too, for people who don't have vehicles. I don't know where the closest bus stop would be. This would be an easy place to make it from a bus stop.
Well, maybe that's something that we ought to prepare for a coming meeting, the next one. Well, we meet in a week though. We actually have a short window on this one because we are meeting late this time. But if we can get to those points as we continue to make investments here into the space.
And I think we can put together an agenda item that will give you the top items. I think signage is really good because we probably don't have the signage that we should have, especially for ADA, to make sure that they can find the elevator, because we do have an elevator here. We are making some modifications so that we can lock off the areas that are more sensitive here. We actually have a real nice hallway here that's nice and wide and open to the meeting room, that we can lock off all the doors. So from that standpoint, it's nice. Yeah, so I think we can take a look at some of those things.
Even the idea of parking. As far as if you get here a little bit later, there is not a lot of room. If you go around back, maybe you have to pull that in another. So,
It's, and nothing against this building. I mean, personally, I like this room, I'm comfortable in this room, but I don't think to the general public it's welcoming. The whole, as you drive up. I mean, the first time I drove up here, it was a little intimidating as far as where to park, what door to go into, and the like. Now, I know, because I know that somebody very graciously posts signs that I can follow, but, is that what the public is, going to be used to as far as being invited to an open meeting? Try not. Are all of our meetings in the future scheduled to be
No,
here?
not at all.
Okay.
In fact, my suggestion to Bill when I told him that I really liked the meeting that we had here a few weeks ago, was that it was such a good working meeting with the department. And that our schedule this year is to have that strategic meeting once a month, and then what would be the more public business meeting once a month. So this isn't the ideal space for that public meeting. The chambers is really the appropriate place for that. But this to me, was a very good space for us for that strategic conversation that we were having with these folks.
Yeah, and that I absolutely agree, and I think this is a really, because we're all on eye level.
Yep.
We don't have people sitting in an audience like we're in some kind of theater, that kind of a thing. It leads to more open discussion. But right, the public is, I think.
But I think John raises a really, really important point. Let's talk about those critical elements of what it is that the space needs to provide, because it's still a public meeting. We still have to accommodate folks that care to come and sit through the conversation that we have about strategy and so forth. But and unfortunately, we were here tonight to talk about the water tower, and we're not live, because the room wasn't available. So this was just one of those scheduling things that we had. Anything else on the space? Any other old business, or not, reports? Okay. Bill?
This is going to be a report, an update on the 2020 First Street Railroad grade separation project of the city. And if you didn't like the $3,000 increase in the budget for the water tower, you're not going to like this one, because this one is 1,000 times higher than that. So we're talking about a $3 million increase to Moorhead Public Service ratepayers for this project. I was just informed of this on March 5th by Bob Zimmerman. If you just go to that next page, we've got it highlighted in yellow. The first big yellow section basically says we had it in the budget, the city budget, to make sure and hold MPS harmless on the grade separation project. The second yellow down here says, therefore, in order to complete the project, the city may not be able to reimburse MPS for the cost of relocation of MPS facilities, currently estimated at $1.4 million for electric and $855,000 for water. And my staff has told me that the $855,000 is probably half of what it actually is going to be. So we're talking about 1.4 and 1.7 million, so about $3.1 million. And like I said, if you didn't like 3,000, you're not going to like 3 million. So I'm just making sure.
What happened?
Well, I mean, this is.
Well, first of all, Bill, a question to you. I'm getting a document here on the 27th of March, and we have this on the 5th of March. So why wasn't this in part of a package here? I'm usually pretty flexible, but I don't like $3 million of prizes here. By the way, it's new item. That's number one. Number two, to the city, what happened?
I didn't.
I mean, we've talked about this issue for a year, right, or more.
So
things, Commissioner. I didn't know this was going to be on the agenda. This was not attached to the agenda. The subject was listed, it was not. This is the first time I'm seeing this memo, so you'll have to forgive me because I'm not prepared at all for this. And if I had known that we were going to do this handout, I would have brought Bob Zimmerman. But I specifically looked at the agenda and I did not see this in the packet.
Before, Chris, thank you for stepping up here. What is the imperative that this be brought to us in this way? Not in the homework, not even communicated a few hours ago, but put in front of us right now. And do we have to make some kind of a decision?
There's no decision that needs to be made. It is, to answer Ralph's question, it's to make you aware of a budget implication that's not in our budget. As far as, the March 5th to the March 27th, 22 days, I've had this drafted for a period of time, but it seems like, since there's a commission meeting, now's the time to take a look at this. It's putting it on the docket that your budget could be impacted by $3 million. I apologize for not sending that out to you in advance. However, I don't think the message is any different. If I had sent it to you right after May 5th, you just would have had a couple more weeks to take a look at it. I've been trying to put, some order to this. We've had conversations over, like Ralph mentioned, the past year, as far as is Moorhead Public Service going to be reimbursed for this. There's like 3 council documents here that's saying that we're going to be reimbursed. This is the first indication that that's slipping away from us.
Okay. We're not going to have a meaningful conversation about this tonight because no one has had an opportunity to read this, and I'm sure that these 4 really want to take a look at this. Heidi wants to take a good look at this. I think it would be really helpful if we had this on an agenda so that there's some preparation, so that there can be a response from the city.
For Bob.
From Bob, yeah.
As well.
It's an old issue. We've been talking about how it is that we're going to pay for these elements of this for a long time, and we've known that we weren't included for all of where our costs were going to be. That's just a fact of it. But I think what we need to do is receive this, and then not go into any further reactions until we all have a chance to really take a good hard look at it, and then have it on the next agenda, if a week is enough time. Have it on the next agenda so that Bob can be here, so that we can all, have a chance to examine the detail, and then have a meaningful conversation. We're not going to be able to do anything beyond receive this from you tonight. And I appreciate you bringing it to us. Homework went out over the weekend. I think it could have been with the homework, but there's a little drama involved here in laying it in front of us, and you got our attention. If that's what you were trying to do, you got our attention. But let's put it on the agenda and have the appropriate people in the room so we can take care of it. Anything further?
No.
I'm disappointed, both at the cost, but also at what this does to the conversation that we're having about not only this project, but another thing. So let's keep cool heads and get back to it here in a week or 2, or a week or.
A week, that's actually next week.
It would be next week. Okay. Anything else?
Just, is that going to be sufficient?
Yes, thank you, it's fine. I didn't even see it on the agenda, I didn't see, because I don't even think it's listed on the agenda, so wasn't prepared.
Well, no, this is not. It's really just an element of our manager's report. So we'll just receive it and let's prepare for the conversation in a week. Bill, anything else?
No, that sounds good.
You got a couple of items there on the general manager.
Yeah, the only other one I wanted to update you on is we have had Dennis Eisenbrown, Energy Services Manager, and I have had indications from, or communications with the Block E partnership. They will not be doing the Capture the Earth geothermal project that we provided incentives for. I don't have much of an update other than that. You've had updates before that gave all the details of what we were proposing, and we had, upped the incentives quite a bit in order to try and get them to take advantage of this. It just, I think, seemed like the site is a small site, and the technology is perceived as complex. And I can't say that it's not more complex even than I originally thought. So I think with those two indicators, that's probably all we have for right now, as indicators for why they're not moving forward with that. So Dennis and I will learn more about that in the coming weeks, and then we'll report back with further information. We will be talking to others that are building either in downtown, or I know Concordia College was very interested in the project. MSU Amarillo, we talked to them. So,
Are the incentives portable to other projects, or do we still have the commitment from MRES and others to do this?
yeah, the American, we'll check on that, but the American Public Power grant was for, a downtown type project. And,
We have it in downtown project.
yep, and then the MRES one was as well. MRES one was pretty broad, it wasn't specific to that one project. And the APPA grant was more for a downtown community geothermal type project, so.
I wear another hat in the community that has to do with downtown, so I have mentioned this to Derek LaPointe with the downtown Moorhead group, and I would imagine he's going to be anxious to visit with you about what the potentials are for this. But he's speaking with a lot of properties and organizations that are looking at projects, so maybe this is something that we can get some talk about.
Right. And I think one thing that we're going to be looking at, and we're talking with other utilities that are doing similar type programs, it may not work as well for commercial as it does for residential.
Yep.
But we've established, I think, some good incentives that I think we're going to check and see whether or not, especially Missouri River Energy Services, can justify the cost of the incentives.
Mm-hmm.
But, it may work better for residential. However, we have the commercial incentives established, and I think we definitely work toward another commercial project. So,
I believe the community, Heidi, correct me if I'm wrong, but in your strategic planning, you are coming up with some numbers for downtown housing, increases, density. So I would think projects are in the pipeline, or at least proposed in the pipeline, that will be coming that might entertain this kind of a project. So,
Potentials.
yep, potentials. Good word, potentials. All right. Anything else? John?
Bill, here, you had gotten some responses from Tanya regarding the training that was done. I guess two things, if you could update us. I know we approved here to get some additional training through the village, and if that has been scheduled. And also, I believe, if I remember correctly here, it was recommended that the commissioners meet with employees on occasion here. I'm wondering here if that might not be a good time for us to get their input as far as how they think this benefited them, and if it's something that we should continue with or look at something additional in the future here. But I think it is important that our commissioners get a chance to sit down with the employees, as I believe had been requested or suggested to us.
Yeah, and there's probably some really good avenues for that, because we've been doing the culture initiative for the past 2 years. So we're really in the third year, and we've switched from Tanya Stendy of the Dale Carnegie Group to to the village with, to John Trombley at least for year 3. And we do have a culture committee, which I think would be a real good group possibly to meet with, because they meet regularly and they talk about these things. And they probably give you a little bit of an update on how things are going. So we can arrange that.
So my question, just because I've come in kind of midstream on this is a process that has completed, or is it an ongoing process?
I would call it an ongoing, but I think, it ramped up quite a bit over the first couple of years. Because, culture is something you're working on all the time. But I think when you bring in a consultant, you're going, okay, we want to really step this up, and that's what Tanya did. And a big part of it is the survey that you see that they did. So they do a survey the first year, what's our culture like, how is this going, how is this? And of course, and then we got 3.26 out of 5. And which, Tanya says, well, it's pretty good. We see that with other organizations. So there's nothing, outstanding or terrible about what the culture was. And then the next year, you do the same survey, and you kind of hope it goes up, and it did go up. But I think that's where we ramped it up, and now you're trying to sustain it. I think bringing John Trombley in, it's a little bit different person. He's a different type presenter, and, I think, it'll impact people differently.
What was the reason for the switch?
I think it's probably a variety of things. Change is just one thing. We basically did 2 years of one consultant, and you kind of start doing the same things over and over again. So just to introduce a new element, I think will change it a bit. And then with the type of workers that we end up having here, as far as what they do, I think John is a little different, just presence in front of them. And I think we've already had one meeting where we talked about bullying and harassment, that type of thing. And I thought John did an excellent job of, talking to our employees and saying, this is an issue out there, it's an issue here, won't be condoned, have to pay attention to it. Do you have any questions? I mean, and Tanya was also tough. She's a good consultant. She does an excellent job, worked on the culture, and I think, we're just mixing it up a little bit, I think. So.
Said it's an issue here. I want to understand what you just said. Bullying.
We've had incidents of bullying. I would call it bullying, but I mean, when John Trombley came in and did harassment training, there's, and you could call it just horseplay too. But horseplay to one person is bullying to another.
Right.
And
so we're talking about awareness and sensitivity.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I mean, when you've got 65 employees, you're going to have issues, and you just have to make sure you're clear that horseplay, bullying, whatever is not condoned. And our supervisors that have to take care of this understand that, and they need the support. And a person like John Trombley in the village does a nice job of giving us the training and the cover, and then we do the follow-up. So it's a good question. I mean, I think that's something that a couple of commissioners talk to the culture committee. They can be candid and ask candid questions, but those things are things that we address at Moorhead Public Service.
Well, we're kind of an HR committee of the whole, because we don't have an ongoing HR committee. Are you suggesting that a couple of us do that?
Well, John is suggesting that, and I think I'm perfectly open to that. I think the commissioners have to be careful getting too much into the administrative areas.
Yep.
But, an audit, a look-see basically can take a look at anything that you want to take a look at. As long as the entire commission is aware that you're doing it, you know, then I think that's perfectly fine.
Are there two of you that would like to do this?
Continue with, because I've had a limited exposure just for like a year or so, but
Yep.
I'm just familiar with that process.
Anyone care to join John for?
I would. I'd like to.
Would you, Chris? I'd be fine with that.
Anyway,
The rest of you, Josh?
would you-
Can't do three or it's a meeting.
yeah, but if you have more,
And they should look at the report back.
And then, yeah, we would want to hear back from them.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm comfortable with you going forward, if at some point in time you feel like you need a change, then talk to me.
Cool. We're a team.
Yep.
We can pinch it when we need to. It's almost baseball season.
Dave, do you want to state the specific purpose of this specific HR committee, just to follow the bylaws, it's kind of like case by case basis?
Let's come up with that. What's the specific purpose for this TUSO? To review the progress on the culture
Initiative.
effort and steps moving forward with the new consultant. Does that express it?
Yeah.
Casey, you got that? Okay. That's not something we have to act on. It's just an expression.
You just appoint.
It's just an expression. Okay. Okay.
and then just for how to go forward, then Bill, I think we need to work with you then as far as scheduling times and places and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's fine.
And we'll put together a little report so that you can have something to read. And I think the culture committee is one group, and then you may want to just meet with me. So, I'm not on the culture committee, that's more the, just the culture champion, we call it. And so they're the ones that are kind of working on the culture and that type of thing. They come to me if they need resources or whatever, so.
Are the people that are on the culture committee generally in supervisory positions, or do you have a fair representative?
Oh, I think it's pretty spread out. I mean,
It's generally not supposed to be supervisory positions. We have one, I think one's, yeah, two.
Casey can probably answer that too. You're on it.
Yeah, there's 2 professional and supervisory employees, so this, basically this group kind of, and then, I want to say about 8 of the collective bargaining employees working together. I'm kidding, there's 3. I mean, Jerry. Yep, 3 professional and supervisory employees out of the 13 of us. 14 of us.
And they typically meet monthly.
About monthly, yeah, several.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That it? Anything else?
That's it for mine.
Okay. Let's move on. Item number 10 is to approve the 2017 Annual Reliability Performance Report. Oh, just shut.
Well, I can.
No, please don't. Travis, you're up.
Travis Schmidt, Electrical Engineering Manager. So we're going to talk about the 2017 Annual Reliability Report. This is an annual report that we give to the commission. This is basically the electric reliability for Moorhead Public Service. In 2017, we met 2 of the 3 indices that we calculate off of. One of those indices was not met because of a 10-minute power outage for the entire city of Moorhead. That power outage was due to a structure for Wapla that fell over in July of 17. Other than that, the other big topic that we talked about with reliability is our 4 and 5 nines and the ability to be between those 4 and 5 nines. Last year we met that. We were in 99.9919, so a little on the lower side of the 4 nines and 5 nines, but we still met it. If you actually take the 10-minute outage that we had off of that, we actually hit it dead in the middle. So 99.995% reliable. So that's about 25 minutes roughly. A customer will see an outage for the year. So other than that, I'll open it up for questions.
Group? Any questions for Travis?
No squirrel questions.
No squirrel, have we done with the squirrel problem?
I took a drive out to look at that tower that blew over, expecting to, see quite a sight, and I was amazed at how quickly it was gathered up and balled up and hauled away, and a new tower going in place. It was amazing.
Yeah, and they'll actually replace
The response was amazing.
Yeah, and they'll actually replace that existing tower wood poles with a steel structure there.
Yeah.
So do you have any plans to deal with the interstate salt issue on the Fort Taylor substation?
Yeah, we're still fighting that battle. We're gonna continue, we're gonna ramp up maintenance or cleaning of that substation. Other than that, it's really a MnDOT issue, and I don't know if we have a lot of clout with getting anywhere with the MnDOT and changing what they put on the roads.
Maybe send them a bill?
Send them
Try.
They need the money. Got to pay for a water tower. Can I get a motion to approve the report from Travis? So moved. Got a motion, got a second?
I'll second.
Got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Thank you, Travis.
Welcome. Keep up the good work. 5 nights. 5 nights.
Lots of items.
Someday.
Got 5 in there, that's just. All right, item number 12 is to approve specifications and authorize advertisement for bids for Center Avenue water main replacement. This originally was kind of slated toward the consent agenda too, but there's been a lot of conversation about Center Avenue. It's worthwhile for us to actually address this and get Travis and whoever involved in the conversation, because there has been a lot of community conversation. There's impact to downtown goals and so forth. So I thought it'd just be a good idea to pull this one off and have a good conversation about it. So with that, Bill or Chris or whoever it is needs to lead off.
I think I'll let Chris lead off. Oh, he's got one.
I can go ahead and get started on the Center Avenue water main replacement project. So we actually started the design process and notification for this process for this project actually back in December of 2017. We sent out notifications, and then we held a public open house in February and talked with a number of the property owners in the area. And there's been several public input meetings with respect to the planned city improvements. What we're looking for tonight is kind of some input as to kind of where we go from here. We received a number of input, had a number of meetings with both public folks that are in the affected areas and with city engineering staff. And we're at about, we're very near done with the plans, but before we go and advertise and spend some more money to finalize the plans, we really wanted to kind of get some input before we invested those resources. Right now, the plans are very near done. We'd be looking for a bid opening around April 24th and then a bid award on May 15th and May 14th for the city council. And one thing that's kind of ongoing with the city process, the city's looking at a number of alternatives in terms of the pavement design and lane structure in Center Avenue. And my understanding is that they're looking at finalizing the preferred alternative at that May meeting. And that would be at the same time as when we'd approve the bids for this project. But right now, based on kind of where we're at on the project, we're recommending that we go forward with the project in 2018. And then the city would presumably come and do their project, assuming that the city council approves it, in 2019. So there's a lot of discussion about doing a combined project. We still feel it's appropriate to do it in a phased manner, the way we originally proposed. City engineering is comfortable with that approach. that's kind of where we're at on the project. And I really just wanted to get some input before we went too much further, and,
I was anxious for you all to be aware of this because as we've had these conversations, the impacted businesses and properties have been more than insistent that they want to see this project every season. And you know, we have a lot of reasons why we like to do our work in a second year. That being said, the people that are most impacted would like to see this work done in 1 year. And so we're still trying to arrive at what that's going to be. And so we're dependent on our friends at the city to help us all get to the same place. And so I was reluctant to just have this on the consent agenda for one thing. So when I saw the draft agenda last week, I asked them to remove this so that we could talk about those things. Our team is good at what they do. They've made terrific recommendations to us in the past on getting this work done because of settling issues and you know, all of the various things that help us do a quality project. But we also want to be responsive to our customers and to the folks that are talking to us at these public meetings. The meeting that we had, the public information meeting that we did have, was about this project, but it turned into a conversation about the Center Avenue project with a lot of passion. And so I'm open. I could say, Chris, thanks for the recommendation. I understand all the good reasons to do it. But the people that are adjacent to the project don't want to have us out there for 2 years. And so we're gonna go with another idea. You know, if this group thought that it was important for us to get the work done ahead of time, then we'd have a communications challenge to talk to our friends there in that neighborhood and explain why we're moving ahead. It seems like it's possible to get it done in 1 year. I think there is also real potential for more work to be done than a mill and overlay, which may affect some of the issues about settling and compacting and so forth, because there's going to be a lot of work done out there instead of just some simple work. So they're still dealing with those issues. So we have a recommendation, but I thought it important that we understand what's going on dynamically with our neighbors.
from a kind of fiscal responsibility aspect on this project, you know, we're at a critical point that we kind of need a decision. Either go forward and finish it off and spend the rest of the money we need to get this thing a bid at an appropriate time where there's still some contractor availability.
Yep.
If we defer much longer, we're going to be put into a later part of May, and the contractors just won't be available, and/or we get just high bids. So really now is kind of the time where we need some direction in terms of where we're going to go.
So a question, Chris, we're not going to close the entire 5 or 6 blocks off, right? We're going to go block by block, is that correct?
Yep, yeah, it'd be a couple blocks at a time. Usually the drills can range from 300 to 600 feet. So in that area, we'll have to close off the north 2 lanes, and then the south 2 lanes will maintain east-west traffic. And so there'll be a few access closures on the north side of Center Avenue, like the Thai Orchid one is probably the most significant one that we'll be closing. But it'll be, you know, a 2 to 3 month project. That's the approach right now. The big kind of question mark we have, and one thing that we'll have to deal with if we do decide to go forward tonight, is dealing with the crossing at 4th Street. The crossing at 4th Street on this project actually has a lot of significant impacts. I've talked to it's actually, the business is south of Center Avenue on 4th Street, so those condos, the Shake, it's like a Shake Shop and some travel agency. I've talked to some of those folks. We'd have to work really closely with those folks because we have to close off the tracks there for a little while for a crossing at Center. So along the main run of Center Avenue, to me the impacts aren't that significant. You'll see some orange out there, but traffic will be maintained. And we'll work closely with city engineering to make sure that and we do everything we can for, you know, within reason for business-specific signage and things of that nature.
This is, you know, pit to pit, you're pulling names rather than opening up.
Right, so it's, yeah, we'll have a directional drill out there, you'll have 2 pits, you'll basically just drill in one side and then pull in the water main from the other side.
Yep.
So it'll be, it's similar to what was done in Main Avenue, that was a pipe bursting job, but from a public standpoint, it won't make much difference. You'll just see some blue pipe line on the north side of the road, you'll see a couple pits, and there'll be some people doing work.
I had expressed at that last Center Avenue meeting a week or 2 ago that I had really hoped that we could arrive at the same place at the same time with the city on a decision on this. Is that possible? I mean, we're here to make a decision, but.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted you to be aware of, I mean, we can go and bid the project, we can do the advertisement, we can invest the resources so that you could make a decision on May 15th to award or not award based on the city's recommendation, but we'll have a commitment of $10,000 to $15,000 to get there. And so the risk is we go through that process and for whatever reason, we don't award at that meeting, the $15,000 is gone and spent. So, but it's certainly possible. You know, any other, you know, we'd go and bid it and we'd have a contractor kind of ready to go, and then we just decide not to award. We have to tell them. So I mean, that can leave sometimes the contractors with a sour feeling, but it's within our authority, within our power to do that. It's just probably not the most preferred option.
Well, again, I want to think about the folks that have turned out for those meetings, you know, because they have their feelings too, but I've been around enough of these projects in downtowns over the years to know the pain that these businesses go through. And, you know, a lot of those shops are pretty, you know, on the margin anyway. You know, I just hate for us to be responsible for putting them through more than is going to be necessary. And if they believe that a single year is preferable to 2 years of work, I want to respect that. You know, that's my feeling. And I have expressed that to them. I've expressed that to the city folks. Bill knows very well where I am on this one. But we're here. We need to make some decisions on what to do. You know, I tend to lean toward what Chris just described as a strategy. We could go ahead and bid this effort, and it may be that we're going to have to eat an expense, but not knowing where the city's going to land on this yet, it might be a risk that we need to take.
But I mean, so I don't understand why we're waiting for the city. The city's going to say yay or nay on doing it next year, right?
Well, they're going to make some decisions at the May 14th meeting regarding the preferred alternative. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
So but why does?
And that affects time.
But why does the preferred alternative change our decision whether we should go ahead or not? I mean, we're dealing with a settling issue, but it's the same issue whether preferred alternative A or B comes along, correct?
The issue is that if it's a more complex project that the preferred alternative is, it could be a 2-year project anyway. So then by us delaying a year, yeah, it turns a 2-year project into a 3-year project, or we could have just as well done our project and been in and out of there. We've kind of been saying, no, let us get in, let us get out. We're not going to be that disruptive, and then, you know, the city can do their project. This is one of those projects that the city council approves. You approve it, you approve well, you actually approve advertising bids, but that they don't approve, but they have to approve bids. So on May 14th, they could actually make the decision on whether to delay it or not. And that's a little nuance that's interesting, because then that costs us $10,000 to $15,000. But we talked about this quite a bit at that planning meeting that we were at, with the city included in that. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's complex. the timing, and if Bob Zimmerman was here, he couldn't tell you that he can get his project done in 1 year. And if you put our project in with it, it's very likely it's gonna push it into a 2-year project anyway. So that's where we're saying, just let us get in and get out, and then you guys can worry about whether yours is a 1 or 2-year project. You know, so the customers that are trying to avoid having this done over 2 seasons are still likely to have it a 2-season project. You know, even if we do delay ours for a year. And then our significant risk is we've had water main breaks on that line before. You know, and that happens this winter, we're gonna wish we would have replaced it. So.
One more question, sorry. So is Bob concerned about the settling issue as well, or is he?
It's an important issue, but the timing is the bigger issue. It's just, you know, trying to fit 2.5 month projects in one construction season is gonna be very difficult. And, you know, we don't completely understand the city's scope yet. We have a good understanding of ours. It's just with contracts and delays and weather, it would be challenging. And so we're open to the possibility, but, you know, we just want everybody to be aware it's gonna be a challenging process to get it all done in 1 year, just because of the variety of scope on both particular projects.
John?
Well, I'm very concerned for several reasons here. I think what I'm hearing from more public service staff, on the worst case, this is going to take some long time. On the city case, it's going to take a long time. In your statement, in the body of the text, is you talk 6 to 8 weeks for both projects. So if we can't get a construction project done in 5 months, I think we have some significant issues with projects. The second thing, both you and Bill had said that our project is going to not have a real significant impact because we're going to be drilling. So the settling issue is, I'm a little confused about how we're saying we're going to have all the settling issues when we're just, both you committed to that there's going to have little impact before. The third thing, I think is probably the most important for you who were not at the meeting with the owners. They are very concerned that this will put them out of business. And if we do 1 business or 2 businesses, I really will not support this because of their concern. There's no reason in my mind that we can start a project in April and finish it in November. They're doing street work in Fargo right now. So if they can start in March, why can't we start in May? So that, and I'm not looking for you to answer that right now. I'm just sharing my concerns and observations at this point. And it came from several owners. You call these meetings, you ask for input, and nobody listens. Because you're going to do what you want to do, and there's a statement here which I have a little concern with. It's our preferred way to do this project. It's not my preferred way, because we're going to negatively impact our businesses. And I do not buy into that.
Anyone else? It's a tough one. It's always tough when we start affecting folks and their livelihoods. And I'm kind of with John. It seems to me that we need to at least make the effort to do what we can to accommodate these folks. And what it is that they have said that they would like the project to look like. If that's trying to cram a lot into 1 year between March and November, so be it. You know, that's that 1 year. We're servants in this respect. We aren't just the big bad utility company that's going to come in and tear the street up and get our work done and put the cones out and so forth. You know, we can also be responsive neighbors. You know, in fact, I've always thought that's my job here on this panel more than anything else, is to be one of the customers and to represent the customers more than the team, you know. I like working with all of you, but I'm put here to represent my neighborhood. And this doesn't happen to be my neighborhood, but one of the 4 wards is. And it happens out there too, so. We could proceed with the bidding, we could proceed with all the process. We're going to risk an investment of several $1,000s. Is it worth it? Might be worth it.
You have to have a little bit of a crystal ball to understand what you might do in May.
Yeah.
You know, because.
Some Mays we're fighting floods, other Mays we're
Yeah.
pushing up daisies, you know, I mean, we're, well, not pushing. But we're growing daisies, so, yeah, you know, that was really odd. But we don't want any businesses to be pushing up daisies.
Right.
Or let's not contribute to it in any way if we can help it. Ralph?
So I'm still at a loss here. So if the city doesn't start until next year and you think we should go with the city, then we shouldn't approve it.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right? Then we shouldn't spend the money at all.
Because, yeah, the city's not gonna start until 19.
The city's not gonna start next year, so
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and if you don't approve it, probably your only risk is some settling, which where the bore pits are, there'll be settling.
Yeah, that was, yeah,
You know,
even though we're
that's where the
drilling.
pits are, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, there's significant holes, you know. And then the other risk is water main breaks that occur on that stretch.
Yeah, and we'll deal with that.
And, you know, that's a added cost as well. So I mean, you really are, it's a difficult decision. You're balancing a number of things here.
And there might not be any settling, depending on what route the city, what Bob
What the project
recommends
is.
as the project moving forward. If
Yeah, I
it-
don't know how that,
Well,
Yeah,
they
there
were-
were, yeah.
it still probably would be.
If it's
Yeah.
more labor intensive, it's more,
It's
more
still gonna be
extensive,
an overlay. You know, it's gonna be an overlay and we're gonna have big pits. Wherever those big pits are, it is gonna settle. So you're gonna feel those pits. And then you just gotta go in and fix it later, which Steve Moore will like.
but then
I mean, those are the 2 big issues, right? The settling, so people will notice that on the road. And then the water main breaks that we may have over the winter.
and the business's concerns.
Well, the business's concerns, however, that has to be counterbalanced with the fact that you're probably gonna push it into another year anyway. So they're gonna, that's where, you know, we won't know for 2 years whether or not this worked or not,
Yeah.
you know? I mean,
It's their water we're gonna interrupt. if we-
and it may be the perception more than anything else, and the perception is gonna be, we just did what we wanted to anyway. So I mean, for that reason alone, you may wanna just say, well, we'll just delay it.
Chris, I know it's a lot to ask, but is there work that we could shift to in this season without a great deal of difficulty? Or I'm just thinking, if we didn't do this, what else could we do?
It's possible, we're definitely behind the game. It's a big portion of our budget for this year, so it's tough to just reallocate because we'd want to do the same public input process, let people know we're coming.
Ouch.
Yeah, so that would be my hesitancy to just reallocate it to another area because we're already behind the gun because we want to be bidding this stuff now.
Right.
We want to be bidding it in late April, and to start in a new area just isn't realistic.
Shall we make a decision? Folks feel ready to do something? Chair would entertain a motion.
I would make the motion that we do not continue this project in 2018, that we combine it with the city of Moorhead project.
You've heard the motion, is it good?
I would just, you could say the same year, but the combined means something contractually that I don't want. So you could say, you could do it in the same construction year.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, good point.
Good point.
Thank you.
Good point. with that and that correction, is there a second? Did you get the,
Kind of, do not continue this project in 2018, and then how did you want to state this that?
Do it at the same time as the city does it.
do it in the same season, same year as the city? Project, whatever it is.
The do no work, I may need to do some work on it, so I mean, it'd just be, just do the construction in the same season. So I mean, I may need to do some surveys, some re-up on utilities, things like this.
Okay. I think I understand the spirit of the motion.
So, and do it in the same construction season as the city project, as the related city project? Does there need to be anything additional as far as what Chris just said?
Chris was expressing the need to be able to work on this project this year.
Right.
Oh, outside of,
Yeah, outside
so
of
like the
construction.
engineering side of it,
Engineering,
yeah.
okay, design side, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
I second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ralph?
So if we do this, Chris, you have to go in before the city does, right?
Yeah, we will, yeah.
So does that affect Bob's timeline then? Maybe if he wants to start in May next year?
It will, I mean, I'll talk to him this week, or, the city engineering staff I would talk to this week and just say. that's
And
what
we
it
have
is.
these talks.
Yeah, I mean, they're aware that we're at a decision point for the project, and so they understand. And I think we can make it, it'll be challenging, but we'll see what we can do.
Another question?
Yeah. Nancy, can we move this budget from this year to next year? Put it in reserve for next year so we can do more next year?
Yes, I think we've actually got some project this year that was deferred from last year, so we'll just keep pushing things out. This, I think, next year, I think, was our last, like, $1.6 million water main replacement year, and then we dropped down to about $1 million a year after that. But we do reserve it and allocate it to the future.
We're good with that? Okay. Any other further questions or concerns? From the city, Heidi? Okay. You've heard the motion, it's been seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Thank you very much. Next item, pulled from the consent agenda, item number 13, I believe, John, yes.
I know it's new point at this time, but in your financial considerations, so.
Pardon me, I was looking at Travis.
We're on item 13.
Yep.
And financial considerations, over budget, the 87.7 will be deducted from 219 planning water main replacement project, 2018 capital fund. Yes, that's the point I'd like to discuss as far as, is that appropriate? Should we make that change, or what other options are available?
I suppose the other option would be we could take it out of water division reserves. I just, in terms of the 2018 capital budget, I don't have much flexibility there. So that's why we wrote that the way we did. But that would be the other option.
And is that, Ralph, I think you're probably good to give input here. And that's where I raised the question as far as if that's, because if this is what we approved, this is what we're going to be doing here.
Well, we have a similar item on, similar issue on item 19 as well.
Yes.
But I think with the release now of the budget from center, I think we'd be okay.
Yeah, well, that's what, so as of the way it's written, as far as if that's everybody's comfortable with that process here, that's why I just want to make sure we had that.
Nancy's nodding as well.
Well, like Ralph mentioned, now we have extra money for 2018. So,
Yeah, that's like I said, beginning,
yeah. So that, if we'd have known that wasn't gonna happen, you could have phrased this a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's just I didn't want to do it contingent on any other item.
So
That's no clarification, but I have to.
do you want to alter this at all before we go to the motion?
Not really, because that's just background. I mean, the important thing is the motion and the recommendation up on the top.
Okay.
So I don't think it's gonna change that. But it's a good discussion, because we always talk about that, trying to figure out where the money's coming from if we go over budget.
Okay.
All right. With item number 13 then, I would entertain a motion to approve. Got a motion, got a second? Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Item number 16, again, John.
Let me get there. I believe as far as one of the causes of was that there was some damage done to some property after inclusion of attached amount of things in total construction. Trying to find it here, but you referenced that there was some damage done to more public service property, but you didn't say who's the cause, but you did say it delayed the contractor, so did the contractor cause damage and then delay the project, and if so, why are we paying them extra to delay?
I can speak to that. John's referring to COP 03, which is the third bullet point down in the item 16. What happened on that portion of the project is we're cutting a hatch, and the engineer and owner specified the location to cut the hatch. When they cut that hatch in that location, there was electrical duct in that location that was damaged. And so for the safety of everybody, including MPS staff there, we told them to stop work until we could pull the wire, rerun the wire, and make sure that it was a safe work area before the contractor commenced work again. So the delay on the saw cutter is actually what's reflected in that $1,439 is a portion of that change order.
And who was the saw cutter?
The saw cutter was like subcontractor of Bryce Lake, who was the general contractor. I think it was Diamond Saw Cutting or something like that, but it's not the saw cutter's fault. I mean, because we tell them where to cut it,
Okay.
and they assume that
We
it's
didn't
clear.
locate that.
Yeah. The problem, the root cause is that it's very difficult to locate these electrical conduits that are buried in slabs because they're just.
That's all clarification that was
Perfect.
We told them to cut there.
Yes, sir.
That's our baby. That's our baby, okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve. So moved.
Second.
Got a motion to the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item number 17 is an item to approve final, whoops, we did that one. Item number 18 is done. Item number 19, approve additional 2018 water main replacement project. Chris?
So a little background, again, in December, you approved the list of water main projects that our MPS staff are going to work on, associated with the budget as well for 2018. This project came about in, I believe, late December, early January of this year as a result of plan improvements by the city. It was actually the sanitary sewer folks for the city are going to be putting in a new lift station at 14th Street and 9th Avenue South. And we have some cast iron water main in that location. They're basically going to be putting in a new lift station, doing some significant excavation around that lift station, and that's where our water main is located. And while they're doing that project, we just felt it would be appropriate to replace the cast iron water main in that area because they're going to have to undermine the water main to get to where they need to put the new force main. So the water main will be disturbed, and what we've kind of learned from previous practice is that anytime disturb soils around water main, we're going to have water main breaks in the future going forward. So we actually contacted the sanitary folks in the city engineering to get involved in this project, and they were it was a great collaboration to get involved. Right now, our portion of the project is considered an alternate on the project, so if we elect to move forward with it, the city would just award the alternate on the project, and we've estimated the total cost to be about $65,000, which wasn't included in our original budget for water main replacement for 2018.
Seems like a good idea. Folks?
Yeah.
Good. I'd entertain a motion to approve. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Or get a motion and then discuss. Go for motion. So move. Got a motion.
Second.
Got a second. discuss?
Well, just a little more discussion on the Center Avenue now with $700,000. I understand what you said earlier about the potential benefit of bidding early. I'm just wondering here if we still should have an open mind about maybe projects in the fall or whatever that could still potentially be done with those dollars, if it would make sense. And I guess I'd leave that to staff to research that, to see if there's a collaboration with the city, as far as if they have some project that, if we have late fall, whatever the case may be here. And if it makes sense to do it, if not, then certainly understand your point.
We'll kind of go back to the drawing board. I mean, I didn't want to invest a ton of time into it until we had direction on Center Avenue, so.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll certainly evaluate and due diligence.
Sounds like a bonus opportunity for some contractor.
Yep. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All righty. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Item number 20 is to approve and adopt updated water supply plan. This sounds heavy.
So this has been a long-term project. We actually started this project back in the fall of 2015. And kind of just a little background as to what the water supply plan is. The water supply plan is really a compliance document that the DNR uses to kind of monitor how utilities and cities respond to drought-type situations. So do you have water conservation measures in place when a drought happens? And if so, what are those measures? So the DNR uses this just to understand how cities respond to droughts, and they really have kind of the same form plan for everybody. We actually did our first water supply plan back in 2009. This is an update to that document. The document itself took about a year of review from DNR, and then we finally got it back here in January of 2018. And so we're here to approve the updated water supply plan. One of the significant implications of the plan is that in order to be considered for the drinking water revolving funding that we've used on the high service pump station project, we're planning to use for the future Southside Water Tower, you have to have this water supply plan in place and approved by DNR. So it's an important document for planning and an important document for, I would say, water conservation and compliance with DNR regulations.
Any questions, folks? John?
Maybe just clarification here with the amount of commentary that we have here regarding aquifer management. And I'm going to kind of go on a little different direction. Would this document be helpful to our appeal with the Clay County to protect the aquifer as for providing this document to them as well? Because I don't know when the appeal is going to be held, but this is a pretty significant document and supports protection of the aquifer significantly. So would that be a value, or do you think would be in addition to our cause?
It's a nice planning document, and we could certainly, it'll actually, we have a website called buffaloaquifer.com. It would go on the website as an update thing. We could certainly email it to them if that was desired.
I guess, I don't know about that, because we haven't heard anything about the appeal. I know the document letter has been sent. So I'm just looking for any other supporting documents that would support our cause to protect the aquifer. And since this is a document significant.
It was less than a year ago that you were in front of the Clay County board.
Yeah.
That was for something different, though. That was the.
Right, so one thing that's complementary to the water supply plan is the Buffalo Aquifer Management Plan. We approved that back in 2016. That goes above and beyond the requirements of this particular plan. And what we did as part of that plan was look at really the drought utilization and sustainability of the Buffalo Aquifer. And we can certainly provide both. This document really is more, addresses the quantity issues, and that DNR is directly responsible for permitting of new wells and things like that. But it certainly would be applicable as well, yes.
I guess I raised the question just for discussion purposes and what your thoughts.
you know, what's the context of this document? It's a compliance document for the Department of Natural Resources, not really our water supply plan per se. So whether or not, you know, the Clay County Board would have interest in this or would help them, I'm not sure. The one that Chris spoke of, that he talked to the Clay County Board like maybe 11 months ago, was the Buffalo Aquifer Management Plan and all that. That was more important, and probably would be more important for the Clay County Board when the appeal happens in the next couple of weeks. So,
Is there a brief 3-sentence update you can give us on the process?
well, I'll let Chris, you know,
While we're on the topic,
I don't know
I
if
think
you want
it's
to
more
do it.
appropriate for close. We were gonna close for that every time.
that was my earlier question, so that's okay. We'll wait. Okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve. If we understand the English.
I move to approve and adopt the updated water supply plan.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Item number 21 is an item to approve modifications to MDS organizational structure and job evaluation ratings. Bill?
The bylaws of the commission state that the commission will approve the organizational structure and the number of personnel. So whenever we have a change in the organizational structure, which really is the job evaluation rating, as we call it, or the number of personnel, then we bring that forward. What we have in the budget this year for additional personnel is an information technology technician, that's number 1. Number 2 is a GIS technician, and then number 3 is the customer service. Either one of two, we have like filled that out, either a customer account specialist or a cashier. The other 2 are retitling positions, and that's more housekeeping. But we bring those forward as well because we consider the organizational structure of the title. So we're trying to follow the bylaws. We've talked for a couple of years about having more IT support. We have one person that does IT. There's a lot of things that are happening as far as, you can read it in the paper all the time about attacks that are happening and that type of thing. In addition to that, we've got all the other IT needs of more public service. So if this one person does all of that, we would have the technician, you know, basically it's more of a right out of school type position that would work their way into understanding all that we do in IT. From the GIS standpoint, the Geographic Information Systems, we have over the past number of years put a lot of information into our Geographic Information System, and having a full-time technician versus several part-time would actually help the quality and quantity of the information that we need to get into the GIS system. From a customer service standpoint, you know, we've got a strategic direction that talks about having more empathy or caring in our, you know, response to customers. And I think having adequate staff would help with that. Last summer especially, with vacations, that type of thing, if you're understaffed and there's a high demand, that gets difficult. So we're looking at adding another staff person there as well.
So what's the difference between a GIS technician and a GIS analyst? That was, I think, the change that
No.
we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, Travis might be able to help me on that one. I mean, Todd is, no, Big Todd is not gonna do that. You want?
So just looking at it, a technician is more, from the standpoint that we look at it, is more of doing the field work or out in the field doing the GPS collection and more field-based or out on job site work. The analyst is doing more of the worked on projects, putting maps together in the office, things like that. Is that?
Analyzing data.
Yeah, analyzing data and putting.
Applying what you found in the field.
Correct, yeah,
To the
just,
product?
doing more of the computer side of the work instead of out in the field GPSing water main, wires, things like that. You know, right now, our interns or part-timers that do that work, that's pretty much what they're doing, and that's more of a technician role.
What was the change over the weekend? Yeah, the change over the weekend.
From technician to analyst, just a typo, really. It was.
This was just a conversation between Todd, myself, Nancy, and Bill, and it was just an error on the agenda.
It seemed to me that there was either a real change in what your proposal was to just the wrong label, I suppose, because those two roles are different.
Yep.
Salaries the same.
As we talked about it a week and a half ago, one of the things we thought was the analyst title would be maybe more appealing to more educated people. So we usually have the ability to draw somebody with a little bit more education. And so for marketing for the position, I think that's one of the other big items on it is the analyst will be more appealing than the technician title.
I can see that. Any other comments, folks, from the top one there, administrative assistant to executive assistant? Is that recognizing an evolution in the role, or what? Is this too HR oriented here? I'm not putting a personality into this as much as I'm wondering what's the difference.
I can tell Bill quick. Job description didn't change a whole lot as far as those roles, but to kind of remove that secretary classification for the most part, and advance it to admin assistant, where that position is at, and then the executive assistant, which is a higher level position than the admin assistant position. So that make a little bit of sense.
Okay. They're good for you folks. Anything else?
I guess I'm just curious as to what kind of measurement tools we were utilizing in determining that you needed additional staff.
That's a good question. And we've talked about that as well. As far as measurement tool, on each position it's a bit different. The IT, as part of the initial culture initiative, we had a number of interviews with different staff people, and IT quickly came up as one that there's a lot to do for one person. So that's really where that happened. The GIS technician, that's an evolving position as well. And as we get more things that need to be entered and analyzed, and that's just evolving over time. You basically are looking at the people that are doing the job to kind of tell you and give you a plan. On the GIS one, we hired a consultant to kind of come in and look at where we are and where we're going and whether or not we need staff. And they actually talked about, needing more staff, so I mean, we could be revisiting that one as well. On the customer service one, we didn't do any outside study or anything like that. That was more just looking at, situations where we have a full lobby of people and, and it's at a time when we either have vacations or someone's sick or that type of thing, and we just don't have the coverage that we need.
Definitely, the growth in the city in the last 3 to 4 years has a substantial impact on that too, and especially as we add apartment rental units instead of houses, that need for customer service increases there, so the number of move-ins, move-outs, people relocating to different spots within the city definitely drives those numbers. So more bills going out, more customer service touches for all the increased customer base.
Good question.
Bill, do we have we have something, an issue or an arrangement with the city coming up on GIS that we're going to need to talk about? And is this reflective of that?
We're working on, we share a GIS software package.
Yeah.
And the consultant that we were using, which is the same consultant that the city uses, has said this, the same thing as where we're at right now. At some point, we're gonna need our own software systems. Whether it's now or 2 years from now, it's inevitable that it's going to happen. We're negotiating, user licenses between the two entities, and, that's where we're at right now. So we're proposing splitting right now.
Yep.
And I'm talking with the city manager, and we'll end up talking about that. But I don't know whether that's gonna actually come to the commission level. That's kind of small potatoes compared to some of the other issues that we've got. But it's where we collaborate, and like the consultant said, it's very common, and we did it with the county. We were with the county and the city and us, and then the county separated. So it's just the city and us, and at some point, we're going to end up separating. It's just when is that going to happen? I anticipate that we'll have those conversations over the next few weeks.
Anything else, folks? On item number 21? I entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Can I ask one favor quick?
Sure.
Just mention the revision in the motion of the GIS division to GIS analyst. And I'll use the recommendation.
Move to approve the revised
The revised item.
Thank you.
modification.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item number 21 is approved. At this time, the meeting will now be closed for executive session. As authorized by Minnesota Statute Section 15D.05, subdivision point B, and permitted by the attorney-client privilege to discuss litigation strategies involving eminent domain proceedings for MPS 20th/21st Street 115 kV transmission line relocation construction project, and as authorized by Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05, subdivision 3B, and permitted by the attorney-client privilege to discuss possible litigation related to aquifer protection issues. I expect that we will come out for action after the first item, and then return to closed session. And from there, we'll adjourn. With that, we're going to close session.
Yeah, which
Is there a
basically,
motion?
Oh, yeah,
Okay, I haven't missed it.
I move we go into closed session.
I need that motion. There it is, there's the motion on the script. I wasn't following the script. Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We're back in open session. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that.
Second.
A second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.